Thanks, Rabbi Mark. Really good to be with you and everyone here. So nice to see everyone's faces. And I always love being with this community. So thanks for holding the space. And thank you, Harry, too. The link to the spiritual prep for the High Holy Days is a free session coming up. Not this Sunday, but the Sunday after, where we'll do 2 hours of work together, learning, discussing, also doing meditative practices and creative practices on sources related to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Maybe if we have time, Sukkot too, we'll see. It's part of a year-long course, but this is a free taster for those who want to just dip their toe in and try that. A very special session, obviously, leading up to the High Holy Days. So thank you for that. So I'm going to share something on this week's Torah portion, or from Hasidic teachings on this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion, Ki Tetzei, when you go out, is full of mitzvot. Mitzvot we usually translate as commandments, but the root of the word actually also means connection. So I prefer really to think of mitzvot as opportunities to connect with ourselves, with our source, with each other. And one of the mitzvot in this week's Torah portion is that when we have a roof, first of all, when we have a house, when we build a house or own a house, and it has a roof, and bear in mind most roofs generally used to be flat, at least in ancient Israel, we have to put a railing around it to make sure that nobody, God forbid, goes up on the roof. For the roof was a space where people did things on the roof. It wasn't just there to keep the rain off. That would be redundant, not a good use of space in ancient Israel. So people did all kinds of things on their roofs, and the mitzvah is we have to put a railing around it. And the verse in the Torah says, so that nobody, God forbid, will fall off, and be harmed by it. So we are responsible. There's like a level of responsibility, preemptive responsibility, taking precautions to make sure that our property does not inadvertently cause harm to ourselves or anyone else. Make sure it's safe. So there's this railing in for the sake of safety and saving a life. And the great Hasidic master, the Shnobler Rebbe, he has a work called the Me'or Einayim, the Light of the Eyes, which is a very beautiful early Hasidic work. He's teaching in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and it's been recently translated by Art Green. And he says that drawing on the Baal Shem Tov, his teacher, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he says a person really is where their thoughts are. This is something that Baal Shem Tov said a lot. We are where our thoughts are. Wherever our consciousness is, that in a very important way, even if our body is elsewhere, then that is really where we are. So the Rebbe says about this mitzvah to create a railing around the roof. He says, in a way, the building is like a metaphor for a person. And just as the essential quality of the building is the roof, the essential quality of a person is our consciousness, is our thoughts, is where our thoughts are. And so he says, we need to learn from this mitzvah basically how to control our thoughts, how to direct them how we want to. And of course, no one can direct and control your thoughts all the time perfectly. Our thoughts, as we have, if you're here, you probably already noticed, have a energy of their own and do all kinds of things. But part of what we learn through the practice eventually is some degree of being able to direct them somewhat sometime. And he says this is really a key to spiritual growth and to directing ourselves in the right direction, because everything follows our thoughts. If we set our thoughts in the right direction, that then gives us the kavanah, the intention and direction for everything else that we say, and that we feel, that we do in the world. So let's begin to bring our attention inside ourselves. And I'll give some gentle instructions for beginning the practice, and we'll have a period of silence. Make yourselves comfortable. Find the posture that works for you. Finding that balance between relaxation and alertness. As we begin to bring our attention within and notice whatever is happening within ourselves, let's see if we can be friendly, compassionate, welcoming to whatever we notice going on. Any sensations or emotions or thoughts. see if we can give them some basic friendly acceptance. And the Rebbe in his teaching, he talks about trying to achieve a state of attachment with the divine. In Hebrew, we call this dveikut. It's the modern Hebrew word for glue. Devek is related to the same word, it's from the same root. So we're trying to achieve proximity to the divine. And that may sound daunting and distant and not really accessible, but when we remember this principle that our thoughts really are such an important piece of who we are, really what he's asking us to do is to try and imagine, trying to use our thoughts to create that intimacy. And of course, just like all our practices, we're going to try and intend something, and it's going to happen to some degree, and then we'll get distracted, and then we'll try again, and so on. So that's the practice, just to try and intend this thing, and just to be very compassionate and gentle with ourselves when we need to start over again, which may be many, many times throughout the practice. And the image or the focus for this closeness, this attachment to the divine, I'd like to suggest it's drawn from a lot of our teachings about teshuvah, about returning to our source, returning to our highest selves, returning to our true selves. A lot of the sources which talk about this return, which is the spiritual work of this time of year, a lot of them talk about the womb, about our embryonic state. So I'd like to suggest, if it's safe for you, to try imagining yourself either very literally or in some kind of metaphorical way, in some kind of embryonic state. Maybe in the very womb that you were in before you were born, or maybe you're in some happy, safe place that you've been in throughout your life that feels nourishing and safe like a womb might feel. Maybe you're surrounded by people or other beings that make you feel safe and nourished. And our practice is going to be to try and hold our consciousness connected to that experience and to try and let ourselves feel that experience with as many of our senses as we can, as much as we can that's safe for us. And as I said before, starting over when we need to, when we get distracted or just need to take a break, just beginning again as needed. So we'll sit in silence now, imagining ourselves in that womb or that safe place of connection to the divine, being nourished and held and supported by the divine, and allowing whatever comes to come. We're bringing ourselves back there as often as we need to. And let's gradually bring this round of practice to a close. Slowly taking your time, bringing yourself back. You may want to wiggle your fingers and toes or move your body in any other way that it feels needs to move. Feel free to breathe and sigh and yawn, however you want to. Let's come back together as you're ready. I'll pass it back to Rabbi Mark.
Thanks, as always, Rabbi Daniel, for guiding us so beautifully. And I want to encourage everyone to stay present and seal the practice together, offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the mourner's Kaddish, to do so. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, to please stay present for those who are, so that you can offer your compassion and support in their time of loss. Thanks to Harry for sharing the words on the screen. If you'd like to put the name or names of anyone you're honoring today in the chat, you're welcome to do so now or after we recite Kaddish. And after we recite Kaddish, I'll sound the shofar, as is customary during the month of Elul, and invite people to take a moment to take that in. And if you're reciting Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitgadal,
Amen.
And I will sound the shofar, invite people to take a moment to receive this and take it in. As always, thanks so much to our teacher today, Rabbi Daniel Raphael Silverstein of Applied Jewish Spirituality, and to Harry Gilboa for holding our space, to each of you for being here and collectively creating this sacred space for us in the course of the day. And as usual, everyone's invited to stay with us to share your reflections on the teaching, on your experience with the practice today. And little bonus today, we'll share a musical version, an updated musical version of Avinu Malkeinu that our teacher, Rabbi Daniel, wrote and performs at the end of our little 15-minute Q&A session here. If you have a question for Daniel, please put it in the chat. Preface it, as always, by writing question, all in caps. And I will keep an eye out and try to work your question into the conversation. Let me put that out there. Rabbi Daniel, I heard that beautiful teaching about, that the parapet is the often translation, right, for that railing around the roof. It's a great English word, a parapet. I love that. And the Chernobler Rebbe, the Meor Naim's interpretation of that as creating this parapet for the mind, for our being, and about our thoughts being a touchstone for Dveikut, for cleaving, for connecting with the divine in some way. It was a beautiful teaching. So I had an interest. I had an interesting experience of that. Um, so here's my question. Here's my question. I'll go right to the question. The question is, if we pay attention to our thoughts and where they are, and we have this parapet that says, "Uh-oh, my thoughts are taking me. I'm about to fall off the roof here, right? I'm gonna do tshuva and come back to staying on the roof." And being on the roof is, as I would understand it, is having an intention to stay connected to my source, to the Holy One, to the divine. Yes? Is that kind of the
Yep.
sense here?
Yep.
But here's the other way I was thinking about it, is that if the thoughts are always where we are, and our thoughts also always come from our source, then even the thoughts that are leading us off the roof, right, are also from God. It's not like, oh no, I'm getting away from God. I better get back to God here. So the to put a finer point on the teaching, I was thinking that really the debekut happens when we become aware, the moment we become aware. I'll speak for myself. The it happens, the debekut can possibly happen the moment I become aware of, oh, um, the divine is the source of this thought. All my thoughts are coming from someplace. They're not my thoughts. They
Mm.
are an expression of the divine happening through me. And then I'm not falling off the roof anymore. Then I'm home, right? Then I'm connected in some way. So how's that? How's that work for you? Like, so I guess it was a couple of ways of thinking about it. It was, um, I want to focus on my source. I want to be in a state of veikut, of connection, flush with my experience of the divine. And my mind's going to wander off, and I'm going to start wondering what I'm having for lunch later, right? You say like, oh no, don't think about lunch. Think about God. Think about the divine, right? Come back, right? But then I could think about, oh, uh, I was thinking about lunch. I'm hungry. Oh, what am I really hungry for? Oh, I'm really hungry for connection with the divine. Oh, I'm having lunch now. I'm having lunch with the divine. That makes sense?
Totally. Actually, so I deliberated about which teaching to bring on the Parsha. The other one that I almost brought that I didn't bring was a beautiful teaching and practice, which actually is more similar to what you're saying. It's from the Alter Rebbe, another early Hasidic master, the founder of Lubavitch Chabad. Actually, it's brought in this wonderful compilation some folks might know and love of teachings from the Maggid of Medrash and his students on this week's Parsha, where he says the divine is trapped in our thoughts, and we liberate the divine from captivity when we realize that. So it's a bit, I think it's very similar to what you're saying, right? You know, when I become aware that in whatever I'm thinking about, actually the root of it all, the source of it all is the divine,
Mhm.
then that in itself, in his language, liberates the divine from captivity, sets God free, because when I'm conscious of God, then that's a different quality of relationship, and then changes my state. So yeah, both are wonderful practices. I think about this one that we did today a little bit more like going to the gym and working on a muscle of a simpler muscle in a way, a muscle of just being able to say, like, how strong is my ability? And it's going to be different every day for every person, to just bring my mind back to where I want it to be. And that's a muscle that we all need millions of times a day. We're also easily distracted because we're all bombarded from so many sides with so many things trying to distract us. And your one, I think, is a bit more subtle. And we also need to do that work of, like, within the obstacle, within the resistance, within whatever seems to be a distraction, learning to feel beyond the kind of surface level associations, and feel into what's deeper there. So maybe that's a more kind of subtle training.
Um, or yes, and I guess I don't know. I see there's a lot of there are a number of questions here that are kind of in this vein, right? So the mystical spirituality is a non-dual spirituality, right? Which says that the divine, the God is in everything, right? It's not like that's why I was saying like um there could be this kind of dualistic sense of that interpretation of the parapet around the roof to say that, well, God's on the roof and don't fall off the roof, get
Right.
away from that, right? Um, Whereas to say that from a non-dual perspective, where it's all where God's in everything, right? Even in the distractions, right?
Right.
Maybe even especially in the distractions, right? Because once we realize that they're a distraction, they serve as a reminder to come back to God in some way. Maybe that's a way of resolving that in some way. I want to talk about the embryo, and the womb, which was so beautiful. Just to share a little bit of my own personal experience that I spent, during this sabbatical. I was really blessed. One of my goals was to spend as much time as possible near the ocean. And I had an uninterrupted 4 beautiful days at the ocean, contemplating, really just like watching the waves, right? And watching the waves rise and fall, and really about impermanence, um, and really experiencing that. And I'm also influenced by hearing your teaching through the lens of Rabbi Alan Liu, since I'm preparing my teaching for our Shofar project, and reading what he's saying about impermanence, and about being in that embryonic state. So I'm curious in the chat for people about what that was like. Um, um, can you say a little bit more about why you suggested that? Like what are we getting at when we're trying to imagine ourselves, in the womb, in a womb-like state? I think it's very much in keeping with what Rabbi Lou is teaching, by the way, right? Because it's both about connecting with connecting with life before we existed and after in our physical form, and after we will stop existing in our physical form, which he describes as heaven, but he also describes that as a place of love and nurture and compassion, right? So something womb-like, right? And that's where I went with the embryonic, thinking about that. Why did you suggest that? What does that mean for you?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I realized as I was giving the instruction, I wasn't going to have time to go into it so much during the set itself. So in a lot of our Kabbalistic sources and the Zohar and other places, the quality of teshuvah, one of the other names for it really is this quality or sephirah called bina,
Hmm.
that that is in the tree of life of qualities of the sephirah of the Kabbalists. It's sometimes called the upper mother or the upper womb. And
Hmm.
it's the womb that specifically our emotions, our personality, our midot, the character traits who make us who we are, they all come from there. They're all born from this upper womb. And
Hmm.
so one way the Kabbalists are telling us to make teshuvah, to return to our higher self, is to imagine ourselves um, simultaneously with the innocence of before we were even born, with the perfection of someone who had never done anything in the world, who was totally perfect, but also with the kind of higher mind, with a higher consciousness. As Bina is also
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
higher understanding.
Right.
So by imagining myself in a womb or in any other kind of safe space and realizing that I'm receiving from the source, as I mentioned, we're being nourished by God there. Um, that can bring us to something related to that state, a version of that state. And the Kabbalists are saying, that's a great resource for us on our journey of Teshuvah. That's an important part of our journey of Teshuvah, because I was actually just discussing this in person with students today. Basically, a student said to me, let me start from the beginning. I was emphasizing teachings which talk about essentially getting in touch with our own perfection,
Hmm.
which is a very important piece related to what we're talking about now about being in the womb. And this student put his hand up and said, "Well, what about getting in touch with all the things I've done wrong and how I need to fix them?"
Hmm.
Yeah, but teshuvah means return. And what are
Hmm.
you returning to if you're not first of all in touch with your own perfection, your own divinity? What are you returning to? And if you're emphasizing your failure, how is that going to help you really grow? So our mystics really emphasize this point about that there's something, even though we don't experience it in our day-to-day lives a lot of the time, there's something perfect about us, something divine about us. So that's what I was trying to help people get a taste of.
Yeah, thank you. That's a beautiful teaching, Daniel, and thank you for sharing that. And maybe we can put it together with what we were talking about a little bit earlier, because I had the thought too. Um, So number one, just to restate it, what you're saying, is that, we're kind of directing our thoughts to awareness of our essential godly nature, or our divinity within us, and those midot, those qualities that we're innately endowed with, that we're born with, right? And returning to that, right? And then there's our awareness, our thoughts about, well, what about all of the times I was not kind, I was not generous, I was impatient, where I was mean, right? So back to the parrot pet metaphor, then, like, those might say, like, oh, those thoughts are taking me off the roof a little bit, right? So what to do with those thoughts? How to sweeten, how do we not repress those thoughts? Because those thoughts come too, and they serve a function as well. Like your students asking that question, I think, is great, right? It's not like saying that's a stupid question. Our real essential nature is we're good. Don't think about that stuff.
Good.
Just don't think about that, right? So no, you think about that, but how should we think about that? How do we extract from the thoughts about our failures that which serves a higher purpose other than self-flagellation?
Right. So, I mean, this is something every time we get together, I feel like comes up because it's such an essential part of the practice. I don't know anything else in response to that except compassion. And compassion, rachamim, is just, for me, is just, it's that compass needle that just directs me in the practice, because compassion in Kabbalah, rachamim, is also emet, which is truth.
Mhm.
And in our experience of the practice, we find out over and over again, when we extend ourselves in compassion to ourselves or others, at first it feels like I'm just being extra nice, and I'm like, I'm therefore maybe deviating from the truth, because I feel at first maybe I don't deserve quite that much compassion, or the other person, or whoever it is. But
Mhm.
actually, eventually, I get to a place where if I actually do the work, I realize they really are the same thing. That the compassionate response really is the most truthful response. That's what the
Mhm.
mystics are trying to tell us with it, by saying they're the same thing. But we don't experience that on the surface level, on the superficial level of life most of the
I
time.
just hear you. I was going to pause for 1 second. Say that again.
Yeah.
Say it again. Say it again, because I think that's really important. The
So,
compassionate thing and the truthful thing are the same.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah, in the tree of life,
right. And
the
Tiferet
middle,
and then
yeah, Tiferet, the heart chakra, or the heart sephirah, is called Rachamim, compassion, and Emet, truth. And on the surface level of life, we don't always experience that as being the same thing. We often feel there's a tension. Do I be compassionate, or do I be honest? But actually, the Kabbalists are saying, when we really do the work of applying compassion to ourselves and others in a real way, it's a healthy balance of chesed, generosity, kindness, and gevura, judgment, severity. And it takes us to a deeper truth that Rabbi Nachman says beautifully, that it's a truth that, instead of separating and dividing and blocking life, actually brings
yeah,
closeness and brings life.
yeah. I want to cut you off because this is good stuff. This is very good. But I did promise, and I'd love for us to listen here together, your video of your version of Avinu Malkeinu, and maybe next time we meet, we can unpack that a little bit too. So, Harry, you're going to share that, right?
Thanks, Rabbi
All
Mark.
right,
Thanks, Harry.
I really encourage everyone to hang in there for this. Okay, thanks.
It's a new day, it's a new year. I got new hope to dissolve fear. I got new clothes and a new heart. I will sing out till the sea part. I will see the world with new eyes, with the overcast or blue skies. From flat plains to high peaks, I will channel you with refined speech. Cause this is the day every son is reborn, and we are the ones who agree in the dawn of creation. Anticipation, flowing into joy and amazement. See the light spreading, molecules wedding, coming together through evolution. Electrons, protons and neutrons, all in a dance of fission, the fusion. Summer is over, light is retreating into the shadows. It's getting colder. All of the fruits of the harvest are gathered. It's a strange time to trumpet the horn and look at the mirror, but at the same time, I really need this new beginning. How to explain it? If it was made, it was conceived before delivery. I'm not a slave, but yes, I was made, and through true service I have found liberty. Blast of the horn, open me up, help me to connect to something timeless, back in the womb that everyone shares, and nobody knows what now divides us. Just an illusion used by the servants of dark who night the hatred and fear in our heart. I might might witness those waters part 3 times a day if I nurture the spark. I might remember the lesson of memory. I am responsible, waiting so tenderly. I create my own horizon. Whether I'm screaming, whether I'm silent, I decide how deep reality goes in this little window of life. I am not afraid to fail and grow. And yes, I've felt many times when the earthquake in the worst way, and you're walking through a ruin. Suddenly it's crystal clear. What have I been doing? Avinu, Malkeinu, Chonenu, Vanenu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Chonenu, Vanenu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Ki ein banu masim. Avinu, Malkeinu, ein lanu melech ela ta'aseh imanu, leman shemecha. Avinu, Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu, shana tova. Wasting my time standing in line, trying to be something I can't be. I'm not gifted, I'm just sick, and what I hope will cure discard me. So I lay down and I pray down every cell and every tissue, every nerve and every bone, every muscle and every sinew. I said it's all yours, it's not mine. As of right now, I will stop lying, but at the same time, you cannot mind that we got eyes, but we act blind. Cause it's all one when it's all done, and the win-lose is all lost one. And there's good, bad, and a right, wrong, till the ain't source and the lights on. Then we all see that we're all me, and I'm all you, and we're all we. But until then, I'ma kill them, cause I can't see and I'm not free. So I pray hard when I say God, it takes some creativity. I'm a clay shard, I'm a stained glass, I reveal what you channel into me. Avinu, Malkeinu, Chonenu, Vanenu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Chonenu, Vanenu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Ki ein banu masim. Avinu, Malkeinu, ein lanu melech ela ta'aseh imanu, leman shemecha. Avinu, Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu, shana tova. Avinu, Malkeinu, sei imanu staka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu, Malkeinu, sei imanu staka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu, Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu, shana tova. Shana tova, Avinu Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu, shana tova, shana tova.
Well, I'm glad we did that. Rabbi Daniel, Dr. Koach, thank you. And yeah, we put the link here. Here's the link. The link again. Thanks, Harry, for sharing it again. Please
Thank you so much.
share widely. Brilliant. And wishing you and your family and everyone there. Oh, Hoshana Tova. Boy,
Tova.
can really feel that. Sending you lots of love. Many thanks. And everyone's invited to join us. Let's sit into Shabbat together with Alice and Cohn tomorrow at our usual time, everyone. If we don't see you, then I want to wish you Shabbat Shalom to everyone. And but we hope to see you tomorrow. Let's sit into Shabbat together. Take care, everyone. Many blessings.